What's good? It's Woog. We have a 140-pound title fight on the David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade undercard. Damn, this is a nice undercard, isn't it? We've got Subriel Matias, 19 wins and 1 loss, defending his IBF super lightweight title against Shohjahon Ergashev, 23 wins and 0 losses. By the way, both of these guys have super high knockout ratios. Subriel Matias has knocked out all of the opponents that he beat. He's got 1 loss, a loss to Petros Ananyan. That's a loss that he avenged via knockout. So out of Matias's 19 wins, 19 have come via knockout. For Ergashev, out of his 23 wins, 20 have come via knockout. So Subriel Matias, he's grown in popularity among like hardcore boxing fans. He's not one of those names that have made it to the mainstream, nowhere close. In fact, he really hasn't even fought any opponents that most boxing fans are aware of. I mean, a few years ago, he was in the news because he had fought an opponent by the name of Maxim Dadashev. And unfortunately, Dadashev passed away shortly after that fight with Matias. It was a 11th round TKO for Matias, and it resulted in, one of those boxing tragedies that we do get every so often. And that fight took place in 2019. So then 2 fights after that was when Subriel Matias lost against Ananyan, and then he won his next 3 fights, all via knockout or stoppage. And with Matias's fight-by-fight schedule, he has had the unfortunate luck of fighting all of these like really tough but unknown fighters. And that's kind of the worst of both worlds. Like, ideally what you would want is big name fighters that you have a good chance of beating. That's best case scenario. But with Matias, he's fighting these guys like the guy I just mentioned, Ananyan, really good fighter. And their rematch was like a war. And Matias has been in a few wars now. Like, I would say arguably his worst war might have been against Batir Jukumbayev. And that resulted in a 8th round stoppage win for Matias. But you watch that fight, Jukumbayev was just coming at him and they were just exchanging so many combinations. And if you study Matias' style, unlike Ergashev, who I actually see as being more of a sweet scientist, like I feel like there's almost a lazy association when you get these fighters out of like either Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan, or even in the Muslim regions in or around Russia. So we're talking Kyrgyzstan or Dagestan. That's the region that Artur Beterbiev is from. Same with Khabib Nurmagomedov, the former UFC lightweight champion. But I feel like there's often a tendency to look at a lot of those fighters from those regions and just see them as being powerhouses, kind of brutes who like to come forward. But when you look at certain fighters like Janibek Alimkhanallah, or in this case, Shohjahon Ergashev, this guy is a bit of a sweet scientist. Like, you look at his range control, it's way different than Matias. Again, if you get a chance to watch Matias against Jukumbayev, look at how many combinations and exchanges that they're just trading. Subriel Matias gets hit a lot, but his style is somewhat stationary. But if you keep on bringing the fight to him, like Ananyan did, like Jukumbayev did, like his last opponent who he beat for the vacant IBF 140-pound title, Hedamias Ponce, even Ponce came right at Subriel Matias. Like, it's almost like the fighter realizes how easy it is to hit Matias, and then they get emboldened, like, shoot, you mean I could hit him with anything? And then they feel like they should just keep on coming forward and letting their hands go. Well, I mean, the joke's on you, because Subriel Matias' style is kind of like, let's see who breaks first. And he ended up stopping Jukumbayev. He stopped Ananyan in that rematch. And when he lost to Ananyan, it was via decision. And he stopped Hedamias Ponce in the 5th round after Ponce got off to like a super hot start in the 1st round. I think that Ponce might have kind of punched himself out early in that fight. That was just my opinion. But yeah, he stopped Ponce. He hurt him with a hook, dropped him, and Hedamias Ponce quit in the corner on the stool between rounds. But when I watch Matias fight, I'm thinking, why are all of these opponents advancing on somebody who just wants to be advanced upon? Like, I feel like you're doing half of Matias's work for him when you keep on jumping into the pocket and staying in the pocket. Because if Matias can't do anything else, he could throw punches for the entire fight, and he's throwing power punches in combination. So you look at his exchanges, it's like, you just keep on hearing this concussive drum sound. It's like, it almost sounds like you're cooking popcorn because he is just breaking you off with combination after combination. And even if you are the one getting the better of him in the early rounds, he will be there in the middle rounds. And up until this point, he will be there for as long as you could stay there. And the question is, can you handle his heat? Again, it's a bit of a let's see who breaks first style. And by the way, before they had made this match between Matias and Ergashev, it was sounding like we were going to get Subriel Matias making his first title defense as a voluntary defense against Sergey Lipinets, a former 140-pound belt holder. But then the IBF mandated that Matias fight Ergashev. So that's how we got here. But, you know, as I'm sizing up Subriel Matias versus Ergashev, and look, I know Ergashev doesn't have nearly the experience of Subriel Matias, although you could argue neither of these guys have really fought like top names. Like they fought guys who might end up being good fighters or might just be, you know, those types of good fighters that just stay under the radar because they haven't had like the biggest opportunities. Like Jukimbayev, he only has one loss, that one loss of Matias, and he's won like 3 fights since that loss to Matias. Ananyan, after Matias beat him in the rematch, Ananyan has gone on to win his next 2 fights. So I don't know how good these fighters are, but relatively, Matias is seen to be the guy with slightly more experience, though I don't know if we can even say that. Like, I haven't seen enough of Matias's opponents prove themselves at the highest level. Like a fight against Sergey Lipinets would have been a step in that direction. And Ergashev, you know, he fought Michael Fox, you know, Alantez Fox's brother. He fought him, the 6'4" Michael Fox. And, you know, Michael Fox's movement gave Ergashev some issues. And Fox ended up being one of the only 3 guys to take Ergashev the distance. It ended up being a unanimous decision win for Ergashev. And by the way, look how Ergashev starts that fight. Like in the first round, he throws everything at Michael Fox. Like he wanted to get him out of there in the first round. I feel like there's a level of patience in Ergashev's game that it's just very interesting to me. As I said, he's a bit of a sweet scientist. He's a southpaw, and at least on paper, he's going to have an 1.5 inch height advantage over Subriel Matias. And if you look at how Ergashev likes to fight, he's looking for opportunities to blast you with a left hand. And no, he doesn't always set it up with a jab. Like that's one of the criticisms on him when he was a little bit earlier in his career. I feel like he's been doing a better job being consistent with the jab in more recent fights, but he's got very active feet. Like I'm very impressed with his footwork, but you know, unlike Jeremias Ponce, who uses his footwork to jump in and pretty much stay in, Ergashev likes to jump in with 1, maybe 2 punches and get out. He's very good at closing the distance quickly and then exiting pretty quickly. He's not that easy to hit. Like maybe if you start throwing right hand leads and following that up with the left hook, you could catch Ergashev upside the head. Like he's a little bit susceptible. Again, if you lead with the right and then throw a sweeping left hand, like his last opponent did on Shohjahon Hernandez, who ended up getting stopped in the 5th round. Like look at that fight against Hernandez and look at how Ergashev manages distance, manages range. He's very good at just being outside of your range when you're throwing your punch and then jumping in, boom, with like a straight shot or 2. And he's throwing a lot of feints. So he's kind of probing with that lead hand. And again, it's a mixed bag in terms of how he starts to fight. Like against Angel Hernandez in his very latest fight, he was very patient. And sometimes he gets patient like he was against Luis Verdon in the fight before that. But if you look at the fights before that, 2nd round knockout, 1st round knockout, another 2nd round knockout, and then another 1st round knockout. Like he's got a lot of early stoppages. So sometimes he could catch you early, hurt you, and finish you. He is a rare case where he does have a lot of that sweet science range control when he chooses to exercise it. Again, sometimes he could be a little bit reckless like he was, again, in that 1st round against Michael Fox. But he is pretty technically sound. And he's trained, by the way, by Sugar Hill Stewart. So just make note of that when you look at these betting odds that have Subriel Matias going off as a minus 400. Like Ergashev is basically like a plus 300. I'm actually thinking about betting on the Ergashev side because I feel like odds makers are just unaware. Sometimes if they've seen more of one guy than another, they'll go with what they know. I feel like that's what's going on here. But Ergashev, again, trained by Sugar Hill Stewart, is a bit of a technician. Like I look at him as being more technical than Subriel Matias, but he also has knockout power, especially in that left hand. That's a dangerous combo, especially if you are a guy who gets hit a lot. Look, I know that Subriel Matias is the guy who's got, who's generating a bit of hype in this very interesting 140-pound division. I am going to try to go to that Devin Haney versus Regis Prograis fight in the Bay Area, by the way. But you've got Prograis, you've got Haney, you've got Teofimo Lopez. Now you've got Ryan Garcia. You still have Josh Taylor. You have Jose Ramirez. You've got a lot of good fighters, including Raleigh Romero, Alberto Puello. But you also have Subriel Matias, the IBF champion. And look, I actually think that the belt is going to change hands on this Benavidez versus Andrade undercard. I think that Subriel Matias, he is a powerhouse. He does throw just wicked, pummeling combinations that, he mixes hooks with uppercuts and straight shots. Like, I swear, sometimes it seems like he's not even moving his feet sometimes for the entire round, because it's almost like he's got this gravitational pull where he's not doing a lot of like fancy footwork to close the gap. Like, I don't see super active feet out of Matias, yet he is somehow able to lull his opponents into these close range exchanges where he just thrives over time. I don't think Ergashev is going to give him that. Yes, he is a crushing puncher, Ergashev is, but I think that he's going to box him. I think he's going to move. I think he's going to frustrate Matias. We'll see what the middle and late rounds. I mean, this is a 12-rounder. Ergashev has never been a full 12. He's been a full 10 rounds, but Subriel Matias has never been a full 12 rounds. When he stopped Dadashev, that was in the 11th round. He's got a 9th round knockout over Ananyan in that rematch. He lost the 10-round decision to Ananyan the first time. So, I look, I don't think that this is going to be a phone booth fight. I know that because both of these guys have, knocked most of their opponents out, that the idea is that this is just going to be a firefight. And yes, there will be some fire exchange. There will be plenty, I'm sure. But I think that Ergashev is going to box. I don't think that this is good. I mean, maybe he comes out for a moment and just goes head over skis and tries to blitz Matias like Jeremias Ponce did. But once the fight starts to hit a simmer, I don't think that simmering pace will be at close range. I think it's going to be Ergashev, again, southpaw, going to be jumping in and out and just beating Matias to the punch, not sticking around after you let the 1 or 2 punches go, not letting Matias get like 4 to 6 punches off. I swear, look at those fights again against Jukembayev and the rematch against Ananyan. Matias is able to throw so many hard punches. I just don't see how the opponents give him that opportunity to do so. Now, if he ends up tiring Ergashev out, where Ergashev isn't able to move his legs anymore, okay, then we might have an issue. And that is a thing. Like, even when I was breaking down Benavidez versus Andrade, I was saying, if Andrade has early round success, it becomes incumbent on the mover against the pressure guy to start standing his ground and not having to move as much, because you naturally don't move as well in the second half of a long, grueling fight as you did in the first half. So what is the second half of Matias versus Ergashev going to look like? Well, I think that we will get more exchanges. I do think that Matias will have more moments to start letting some punches go as Ergashev's legs start to slow down. But I still think that Ergashev is going to be the quicker puncher, at least with the first punch or two in the exchange. Now, one thing about Ergashev, he does get a little bit left hand happy, to where sometimes it looks like his lead hand, his right hand, might be a little bit underdeveloped. I'm not sure, but it could be the case. Whereas Matias is truly a two-fisted fighter. He is hitting you almost evenly with his two hands. He could throw that straight right. He throws a pummeling jab, but he loves mixing in hooks with both hands and uppercuts with both hands. Yo, I'm going to go Ergashev here, but I'm going to take Ergashev via decision. I think that Ergashev is going to win a close, maybe like a split decision fight over Subriel Matias. So yeah, I'm going to go with the underdog here. I'm going to go with the lesser known fighter out of Uzbekistan, again, trained by Sugar Hill Stewart, to beat the Puerto Rican champion, Subriel Matias, but not knockout. And I got to look at what those props are, because I'd imagine, given both of these guys' reputations, that the money is suggesting that this fight will end in stoppage or knockout. But again, I think that Ergashev is going to win, but I think he's going to do so mostly through his boxing. I'm going to take him via decision here. Again, it's just mind-boggling that so many of Matias's opponents find themselves in these phone booth style fights with Matias, where you guys are just here and here, exchanging 6 to 8 punches at a time. It's ridiculous. I don't think that this fight is going to take on that same complexion, and I think that Matias is going to have to come find Ergashev in several different moments. I think he's going to get a bit frustrated. I think he's going to lose a few of the early rounds because he's going to be a step slow, a step behind Ergashev. And I'm going to take Ergashev via decision. Yeah. Let me know what your thoughts are on Subriel Matias versus Shohjahon Ergashev in the comments. And by the way, thank you for dealing with me this whole week. I've done a lot of like previews for this card, and I did the Chantel Cameron, Katie Taylor 2 breakdown. I didn't do a live this week, and you know, my voice has been recovering from this cold. Like, I feel great. I felt great for several days, but my voice is taking a while to catch up. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Matias versus Ergashev in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. By the way, this is one of those last Showtime cards. We don't know where any of these fighters are going to be fighting in the future, given that PBC has not yet announced where the next home of PBC boxing is going to be. So there's a lot that's up in the air right now, which, you know, I'm sure that the fighters, we'll see what happens with this immense roster. How many stay with PBC as they transition to their next chapter versus how many fighters kind of flee the ship and go on to another platform. Like Matias fights at 140. Is he going to try to, you know, go to Matchroom DAZN to try to get fights with, I don't know, the winner of, you know, Prograis and Haney? Or will he stick around and try to fight Rolly Romero whenever Rolly Romero comes back? Or there's going to be an interim title fight between O'Hara Davies and Ishmael Barroso, the guy who kind of had the weird stoppage loss against Rolly Romero. So yeah, there's a lot to be sorted out. But yo, I think Ergashev is coming out of this fight with that IBF title. Let me know your thoughts. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.